Constellations are great energies which are reflected from the Lord of the constellation of those particular stars that make up the constellation. Those energies reflect the life and quality of the Lord of that constellation. The point is, we cannot relate to those great stars. They're just too far. We can't even relate to other planetary logoi in a specific manner and direct manner. But the signs are Earth's Davic way of appropriating those constellational energies, tuning them down, transforming them, and making them appropriately available for the kinds of little forms, little life forms found on Earth. So in fact, the energies of the constellations do reach us, but they reach us through these transformers we call signs. And it takes a complete 25,000 years or so to move through the circle of all the 12 constellations. We call it a great Platonic year, consisting of 12 precessional years that we normally call a zodiacal age. So there is always a connection between one segment of the ecliptic surrounding the Earth and one of the constellations, even though for most of the time they don't align in space. As a matter of fact, they can be out of spatial alignment, and the attunement of the substance of the sign will be still to a particular lord of a constellation.
So Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, and Aries is springtime, and it is ruled at the personality level by Mars and at the esoteric level by Mercury. So on one level, Aries is the most masculine energy of the zodiac. It's the primal male energy that is ready to fight. But if we look at it from an esoteric perspective and we look at the planet Mercury, Mercury is all about planting the new seeds of thought in humanity. So Aries says, I come forth. It says, I come forth, and from the plane of mind I rule. So with Aries, we come forth with mental seeds and we plant them. Aries brings in the energy of the first ray and the seventh ray, and it has a lot of leadership power and potential. You know, with every sign, we go through a journey. So we go from the sort of lowest manifestation, or I sometimes like to say wretchedness of the sign, all the way to its highest manifestation. So at its most difficult, Aries is impulsive, it is impatient, it wants to be first in line, it wants to fight with everything in its path, it rules the head. Boom, it wants to charge through, it wants to play that children's game, Red Rover, and bash through arms. But at the highest level, as we evolve, it becomes a conduit for leadership, and it becomes a conduit, you get to be the pioneer of whatever is your greatest gift, and you get to plant the seeds as the pioneer. So it is the sign of the pioneer. So Aries is a fire sign, and it is ruled by Mars, and at the esoteric level by Mercury. Taurus. Taurus is an earth sign, and the fourth ray pours through Taurus. And it is a sign of great light and great beauty. At the highest levels, Taurus is all about illumination and the path of light. At the most difficult levels of Taurus, it's about the stubborn will, I will not be moved. It's a fixed sign, so it will not be moved. It has its own rhythms and its own tempo. And if Aries rushes, then Taurus plods at a certain level until we get to the onward rush of the bull of God, which when a Taurus gets going and is aligned with his or her will, boom, there's a tremendous will and momentum. Taurus is ruled by Venus at the exoteric level, and at the esoteric or soul-centered level, it's ruled by Vulcan, that undiscovered planet Vulcan. So what the beauty that Venus brings through is that it asks the Taurian energy to see what is truly of value. Vulcan, as the esoteric ruler of Taurus, gets the form into shape so it can carry the light. So it molds the form into shape so that it can be a carrier of the light. So Taurus is a sign of great beauty. Oftentimes, if somebody has strong Taurus in their chart, there is a great physical beauty or there's a magnetism. It's a feminine sign. Aries is a masculine sign, Taurus is a feminine sign, and it will alternate all the way through the zodiac. It's a feminine sign, so it tends to draw towards itself and magnetizes. It's a sign of manifestation, like making it happen in a concrete way. In Taurus also, there is early in life, there's a struggle. And in fact, there's a phrase the Tibetan uses that says, let the struggle be undismayed. So there is a big struggle in Taurus early on to just get the form moving, or to not have such a fixity. And then the phrase for Taurus at the highest level is, I see. And Taurus is such an important sign around illumination and light. So I see, and particularly from the third eye, I see, and when the eye is opened, all is illumined. So Taurus has so much to do with the third eye that penetrates and sees the light beyond the form. And the awakening of that eye is a powerful moment in the life of a Taurus, when one can see the light. Gemini is an air sign, and it is a dual sign, and it is ruled by Mercury at the exoteric level, and it's ruled by Venus, which is very interesting, at the esoteric level. And Gemini has a lot to do with how we think and speak and communicate, and it has a lot to do with interplay and telepathy and bridge building. It's mercurial, right? So it's got a movement to it. Gemini is a mutable sign. So any mutable sign has tremendous movement to it. And it's important to say that a mutable sign occurs right at the end of a season. So it's when one season is turning into another. So you can't really identify it as a solid spring or a solid winter, right? It's in this transition time. So Geminis have a quickness and a lightness and a curiosity and a childlike curiosity. At the esoteric level, however, isn't it interesting that Venus rules Gemini? Because Venus wants to fuse the two. It wants to bring union out of duality. It wants not, in the case of Gemini, to have just pure fact and pure knowledge. It wants wisdom. So in the case of Venus, Venus wants to marry the head and the heart and have the wisdom that comes from that. So Gemini at its highest level has a tremendous amount to do with the wisdom, love wisdom, and that is why, the second ray pours through Gemini. There are 3 primary spiritual festivals, and the festival of humanity and the festival of goodwill is the Gemini festival. So it's all about connection and relationship and feeling that our two-ness is not two-ness, it is one. We are the one soul. It's a sign where knowledge turns to wisdom. The keynote for Gemini is spoken really, as they all are, spoken from the perspective of the soul, but I like to think of it as the observer, the soul looking at the dance of the personality. So it says, I see my other self, the personality. I see my other self, and in the waning of that self, I grow and glow. So again, it's important to say that Gemini also has to do with this, the strengthening of the soul, infusing the personality. Cancer is the first water sign, and it is profoundly sensitive. It is ruled by the moon at the exoteric level, and at the esoteric level, it's ruled by Neptune. And Cancer's, you know, it is the crab, right? And it's connected to the breasts and the belly. So at a certain stage of evolution, there is a great sense of protection with Cancer. And there's a great sense of like protecting the self from the harsh realities, you know, and it has the armored shell. So the journey for Cancer is really one of being able to shed the armor and stand vulnerable. And Cancerians are known for, you know, as the moon rules it, the changes of the tide, the changes of the moon, the changes of emotion, and there's a strong reactivity early in life. And a real deep sense of fear must be overcome in Cancer. But at the highest level, what Cancer wants to do, it's the great mother energy. It's the divine mother energy. So what it wants to do is not just protect itself, it wants to protect humanity at the highest level, right? It starts out by just saying, okay, this is my family, and we have to be cautious, and we have to be careful, and we have to protect. But at the ultimate level, it opens its arms like the divine mother, and it says, I will hold this earth, I will hold humanity, you know? So the fact that Neptune rules it at an esoteric level is very powerful, because this is such a planet of compassion streaming through. And it is sensitive to the world need, sensitive to the hungers of the world, and it wants to provide. So there's a beautiful phrase for Cancer which says, I build a lighted house and therein dwell. And so it's our lighted house. It's our lighted house. It's, you know, whatever. If you're an artist, it's your gallery. If you have a school, it's your school that you wrap your arms around. If it's your family, that's your lighted house. But you are filling with light the darkened form. And so, you know, an early phrase for Cancer says, let isolation be the rule, and yet the crowd exists. And so you can have this image of this being right at the fringe of the light, and it needs to turn towards the light and come out of this sense of isolation and turn towards the light of Leo, really, which is the next sign. The third ray and the seventh ray pour through Cancer. And the third ray comes through Cancer in an interesting fashion. It can be very resourceful. Cancers take what they have about them and use it to build, because there's a building energy to Cancer as well. So it's, you can have amazing parents, and you can have amazing business people, and you can have amazing creative thinkers in Cancer as well, but due to that third ray. So Leo is the second fire sign. The ray that pours through Leo is the fifth ray, which is fascinating because the fifth ray helps Leo ask the question, who am I? And answer it with more and more specificity, because the fifth ray brings in this discrimination around who is the I that is speaking. And Leo starts out with the personality I, very strong, you know. There's a phrase that says, let other forms exist, I rule, right? So there's a kind of, well, I'm here, I am. And it's the king who is self-absorbed. But as a Leo evolves, it becomes the beneficent king or queen, the beneficent ruler. And Leo rules the heart. And so you could imagine with Leo a sun at the center of your chest that must shine forth. And when it shines forth, it holds all in its vicinity in the light. So at the personality level, the sun rules Leo. And at the soul-centered level, the sun rules Leo. However, at the soul-centered level, the sun is what's called veiling Neptune. So what's interesting about that is that Neptune is such a planet of sensitivity, and at a certain level, though Leo is so connected with, art, expression and artistry and leadership, it is a sign of incredible sensitivity. Because once again, at the highest levels with Leo, we're saying, what self is this? Is this the not self? Is this the soul self? Is this the personality self? And we're discriminating about who we truly are, because in Leo we ask that question, who am I anyway? And eventually with Leo, what we want is for the I, the ego I, to become the we, which it does in Aquarius across the way, right? So we want the definition of I with Leo to grow and to include more and more until we are all one. So there's a beautiful phrase for Leo in that regard. The Tibetan gives the phrase, I am that, and that am I. So it's this expansion of the I. And the journey for Leo is really all about giving the gift of the heart and the gift of the self. However, it's also important to ask, to what end? So is it all about acclaim and pride? The Leo is the lion and there's a great deal of pride. Or is it about a selflessness? Is it about a generosity? And for every single sign of the zodiac, that question has to be asked. That's when we really turn this gift outward, is when we say, is this a selfless act? Is this an act for the good of all? And that's when the higher planets, the esoteric planets, really start to come into play, when we embody these energies in a generous and soulful manner. So Virgo is the second earth sign, and it is a powerful sign of discrimination and analysis, and it has a meticulous attention to detail. And at a certain level, at the personality level, it's ruled by Mercury, the thinker. At the soul-centered level, it's ruled by the moon, but once again, the moon is veiling a planet, and we don't know which. It could be Neptune, it could be Uranus, it could be Vulcan, and at any given level of your journey on the path. Virgo is, again, an energy that is the divine feminine. It's connected to the mother as well, but it's connected to the mother in a very practical nourishment. So in Virgo, we say, how can we purify our physical, our emotional, our mental health? How can we pay attention to a womb, because it really is the energy of the mother? How can we pay attention to all the beauty and health of the womb so that the energy of the Christ can pour through, so that the energy of unconditional love can pour through? So at its most difficult, Virgos get lost in the minutiae, they get lost in the detail, they get lost in the material world and fixing it, because everything always needs to be adjusted or paid attention to. But at the highest level, we're paying attention to building the temple, building the womb, building the physical environment, so that beauty can occur, so that love can be gestated and born, right? So it's a powerful sign of practicality and work and devotion and analysis and figuring out how systems work. So it can be of service. It can be of the truest service, so that the unconditional love can pour through. So there's a beautiful phrase for Virgo, and it says, I am the mother, which the matter, mother, and the child. I, God, I, matter, am. So it's this beautiful dance between matter and spirit. And out of that is birthed the soul. Out of that is birthed the Christ energy. So it's a very powerful and important sign. Virgo transmits the second ray and the sixth ray. And so there's a tremendous love, wisdom to Virgo as well, and a tremendous devotion that pours through the sixth ray. Libra is the second air sign, and it is another sign that's dual in nature, and it is ruled by Venus at the personality level, and interestingly by Uranus at the esoteric level. You might remember that Taurus was also ruled by Venus. So what's the difference between these two? Venus at this level ruling Libra has a lot to do with social grace and beauty and the environment and creating a Venusian rapport. Libra has a great desire to focus on what is fair and just and noble and good and true. You know, it seeks balance. It seeks the noble middle path. It seeks walking between the two, the two great forces. So there's this beautiful phrase for Libra that says, I choose, which is a very important phrase for Libra, because Librans often can't decide. They often weigh. They often sit in the middle. It's the middle sign of the zodiac, so it's the moment where you take a breath. So the phrase is, I choose the way that leads between the two great lines of force. So you could imagine a person on a tightrope, walking this very razor-edged path, because it's the moment, really, Libra is the moment where you're wrestling with the decision whether you're going to go forward in the evolutionary path or whether you're going to just stick with what you're doing. So it's this breath in between, this caesura, this moment in between. Now, the reason that Uranus rules it at this level is because Libra is interested in right relationship. It's interested in relationship that's not about desire or pleasing or codependence, these certain things along the path. It's interested in the relationship that's formed heart to heart, mind to mind, soul to soul. And it's interested in universality and a democracy. It's interested in equality. So Uranus wakes us up to our truest allies and and wants to collaborate and wants to find the people with whom we resonate most soulfully. So, and it's a point of peace, and Librans are always seeking peace and balance. It's not all Librans are not peaceful and balanced. They're often in pursuit of that. So Libra brings through the third ray, the ray of creative intelligence, and it is also a cardinal sign. So even though there's the two and then there's the weighing, it does have tremendous initiating energy because the cardinal energy is initiating. So it initiates right relationship. Scorpio. So Scorpio is the second water sign, and it is a sign that has a lot to do with the present state of humanity. It is, we're in a great scorpionic struggle right now, and Scorpio is a sign that rules transformation. It's death and rebirth. It rules sexuality. It rules death. It rules healing. It rules a plunge into the darkness and emergence into the light. And there's a beautiful phrase for Scorpio that says, "Warrior am I, and from the battle I emerge triumphant." So in Scorpio, we are the warrior, but as opposed to the warrior in Aries, which is much more, which is not subtle and is much more external, the battle in Scorpio is internal. And the battle in Scorpio is really overcoming the lower nature. And particularly, you could even say on the emotional plane, there's a particular Scorpio struggle with the emotional plane. The planet that rules Scorpio at the personality level is Mars, but at the esoteric level, also Mars and Pluto. So both of those are non-sacred planets. So that already tells you something about the struggle of Scorpio, is that we're having to overcome something in ourselves. We're having to face fear. We're having to dive in and wrestle into the light. The fourth ray comes through Scorpio, so there really is the agony and the ecstasy. There really is the high highs and low lows, until we come to the place where we see that really fear is an illusion, you know, and we overcome fear in Scorpio, and we become warriors for the light in Scorpio. Sagittarius is the final fire sign. So we have Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. And Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. And at the personality level and at the soul-centered level, it's ruled by the Earth. Sagittarius is a sign of great forward momentum. It's a sign of the vision and pursuing the vision. The phrase for Sagittarius is, I see the goal, I reach the goal, and then I see another. You can almost feel the momentum in it. You can feel like you're riding on a horse, which is ruled by Sagittarius. Sagittarius rules the legs, you know. So in Sagittarius, there's often a physicality with Sagittarius, although there's a whole nother dimension of Sagittarius that's very philosophical. So you could say, with Sagittarius, you run towards your goal, but you could also stand under or understand in Sagittarius as well, because of that rulership of the legs. And it's also a profound interest in philosophy, the philosophies of life. Sagittarius has a lot to do with the spiritual path. It has a lot to do with choosing the spiritual path and becoming the one-pointed disciple. Because early in life, we shoot our arrows in a whole bunch of different directions. And, you know, we say, the phrase is, let food be sought, right? So I'm hungry, I have desire over here and over here and over here. And we go in all these different directions. But eventually, we come to the one-pointed disciple. Archery is ruled by Sagittarius, the bullseye, you know, so there becomes like, I am going there. Sagittarians are the great adventurers, whether they are adventuring within the body, you know, the inner journey, or whether they're traveling the world. And that's part of the reason that Jupiter rules it at the personality level, because there's such a desire to grow and expand and know humanity, know all the diversity of humanity, right? At the soul-centered level, Earth rules Sagittarius, and it's fascinating to see the number of people with strong Sagittarius in their chart that are very focused on the healing and well-being of the earth, or the animals on the earth, or the certain kingdoms on the earth, you know, because there's a tremendous desire to heal the earth in the realm of Sagittarius, or to pay attention to this planet that we're living on. So this connection is very fascinating. Now, the fourth 5th and 6th ray pour through Sagittarius. So there's a kind of adventure in the 4th ray, there's a pursuit of truth and clarity in the 5th ray, and there's a total devotion and idealism in the 6th ray that pours through Sagittarius. And you know, perhaps the most telling thing is that the glyph itself is an arrow, and the arrow wants to fly directly to the heart of things and wants to pursue the vision with full idealism and one-pointedness. Capricorn is the last earth sign. You know, it is perhaps the most mysterious glyph. When you look at the glyph of Capricorn, we still don't know from whence it came. It is a sign that rules initiation. So it's a profoundly mysterious sign at a certain level. It is ruled by Saturn, both at the exoteric level and the esoteric level. So Capricorn there's tremendous responsibility in Capricorn, there's tremendous structure in Capricorn, there's tremendous purpose in Capricorn, and there's a seriousness of purpose in Capricorn. Now, you could think of a diamond when you think of Capricorn, because at a certain level with Capricorn, you could be climbing a mountain that you eventually figure out is the mountain that is down into matter. And it's just all about, like, I'm gonna win and I'm gonna be the most powerful. And there's, you know, there can be a tremendous amount of ambition and greed and desire for material satisfaction, which you eventually discover as death, right? So, and by the way, you know, Capricorn does rule death. It is one of the great gateways. It rules death. Cancer rules birth. So on the other hand, at the top of the diamond is the spiritual ascent, which is ruled by Capricorn. And you have to pass the tests of Saturn, and you have to reckon with your karma to continue to climb this mountaintop of initiation. If you want to get something done, use the energy of Capricorn, because it is full of purpose and determination. It has a quality of control to it as well, you know, where you, early on, there might be too much control, bending things to your will, as it were. And later, that control can turn to purpose and intention. The 1st, the 3rd, and the 7th ray pour through Capricorn. So the 7th ray brings in a kind of regimentation and brings in the order necessary for the spiritual climb, you know. The 3rd ray brings in, among other things, brings in the business sense, brings in the creative intelligence, and the 1st ray is the leadership that comes through Capricorn. You know, Aries, Leo, and Capricorn bring in the 1st ray. And those are, all lead in a different way. But Capricorn, you could imagine the mountain goat climbing the mountain, the first one making his way up, and often alone. Capricorn is often alone. There's a beautiful phrase for Capricorn. It's quite esoteric, but it's very visual. So atop the mountain, he says, "Lost am I in light supernal, yet on that light I turn my back." So you can imagine the initiate at the top of the mountain with great lines of energy and light and consciousness awakening within him. Yet the choice in Capricorn is made to go back down the mountain, to share what has been discovered, and to disseminate it in Aquarius. Aquarius is the last air sign. A lot of people think it's a water sign just because of the glyph, but in fact it's an air sign. And it is ruled at the exoteric level by Uranus and at the esoteric level by Jupiter. We are entering the age of Aquarius, so this is an incredibly important sign for all of us, for humanity. Aquarius is the sign of group endeavor. It's the sign of group creativity. It says we must come together. We are more together. It is only by coming together that we can take steps forward. So it is no longer the isolated Leo. It is now many Leos within the Aquarian group. And at any given time in an Aquarian group, the Leo must step forward. You know, so you can begin to sense also, it's an interesting thing with these polarities with Leo and Aquarius. Aquarius says, the phrase for Aquarius is, water of life am I, poured forth for thirsty men. And the water of life is the wisdom. The water of life is whatever gift that you have that can improve or be for the betterment of humanity. You could say the water of life is the ageless wisdom poured forth to those men and women that are starved for the real goods, right? The real wisdom. Aquarius is, at a certain level, early on, often feels like the lone wolf, you know, often feels, where are my people? What is my group? Where are they, you know? And it takes some evolving to call your truest allies to you, which, as we sound forth our own note, we call our truest allies. Aquarius tends to, because Uranus rules it at the exoteric level, it's electric. It enlivens things. It doesn't follow the traditional route. Capricorn follows more of the traditional route. Aquarius does not. It innovates, it invents, it revolutionizes, it electrifies. Jupiter ruling it at the esoteric level simply says, we're more together. You know, we're greater than the sum of its parts. This is the way we must move forward as humanity, as one, no longer divisive, no longer polarized. So Aquarius is really the dawning age. It's the energy of universality. It's the energy we must call in. The fifth ray pours through Aquarius. And this also brings in the element of the mind and the discriminating mind and the scientific mind, because it's when we're in the age of Aquarius that we will most likely prove, you know, scientific terms, the existence of the soul. So the fifth ray will help us bring spirituality and science together, for sure. Aquarius is a great sign of distribution, and so it actually rules the internet. It rules our connectivity because, you know, it rules electricity and it rules our connection. So it distributes across the internet. It distributes technologically. So if we have an image of the Earth and you see all the cities lit up, you know, from looking down upon the Earth or looking at the Earth, that's such an Aquarian image because it's the band and connectivity of light. So Aquarius wants to light the Earth through the distribution of light. And one of the practices that Joel Kuhl definitely asks us all to participate in are triangles of light. And if you could imagine all people connected by triangles of light across the globe, that would create another amazing image and another very Aquarian image. So Pisces is the very last sign of the zodiac. It is a water sign. It is a sign of synthesis because it's the last sign of the zodiac. It has to take, it is said that Pisces takes from all the signs. So it synthesizes the gifts of all the signs. Now, at the exoteric level, Jupiter rules Pisces and Neptune as well. And at the esoteric level, Pluto rules Pisces, which is fascinating. So Pisces is an extraordinarily sensitive sign. It's a sign of vastness and silence and vulnerability. It's the sign that rules the oceans. So it's the ocean of compassion. It's a mysterious sign as well, because it is a sign of either your greatest self-undoing or your greatest self-fulfilling. It's the sign of the victim or the sign of the savior. It's the sign where you can plummet into great depression, or you stand raw and available in unconditional love. Some of our greatest saints and saint-like people have this energy of Pisces. It's the energy of the Christ. The second ray and sixth ray pour through Pisces, and there's a beautiful phrase around Pisces which says, "I leave my father's house, and turning back, I save." So, though it's one of the greatest joys for Pisces to be at one, to be in union, to be connected to the source, there is a requirement to turn back until the last one in humanity has traveled the course and has returned. So it's a sign of incredible compassion and redemption and upliftment. And oftentimes you'll see people in Pisces doing charitable work, doing medical work for those less fortunate, doing the work that nobody else really wants to do in many cases, because it really involves working with those most in need or those most in pain. It's fascinating that Pluto rules it at the esoteric level, because Pluto is a planet of death and finality. So in Pisces, you hopefully finally wrap up some of the karma, and Pluto says, we're done. Let's let there be a death, here. It's the last sign of the zodiac, so there is a kind of death before the Aries springtime. Also, it's the fishes. The glyph represents the fishes, and one fish is deeply connected to matter, and the other is deeply connected to the spirit, and they're bound. And at a certain point in Pisces, they have to be set free. So Pisces is a sign of great love, wisdom, and it's a sign of great devotion and great idealism and profound sensitivity and profound unconditional love for humanity.
Now, just the way human beings are not equally developed, just the way planets are not equally developed, we have the non-sacred planets, the sacred planets, and the synthesizing planets, so also constellations of the zodiac are not equally developed. They are lives just like any other lives that have their own evolutionary trajectory. Now we have to figure out which ones are the most developed and which are not, and that's a little bit arcane. But I would say, for instance, Capricorn is one of the most developed of the lords of the constellations, and we can go through them. There will be probably 7 which are sacred constellations, having achieved a certain great initiation, and 5 which are non-sacred and have not yet achieved that.